On today's Monday edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, we're going to start this week off right. We're going to get into them YouTube comments, dive into see what y'all talking about in that virtual street. We're going to hear from Brandon K. Scott, our cousin, back on the show, and much more here with the Locked On Texans podcast. Cody, start the week off right with that countdown.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Monday edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm John, some sports guy Hickman, joined by none other than Cody M. Davis of Sports Illustrated. You know how we do. For today's episode, we're going to talk about Texan Brandon K. Scott. That's going to be fun. But before we dive into that conversation, let's go ahead and hop into these YouTube comments. ISO YG. Now, this is on the episode where we talked about Brandon Cooks, and it was entitled Fading Out. Questions brewing about the future of Brandon Cooks. ISO YG, with a name like that, you better be good at playing point guard or guard in basketball, ISO. But he commented that Nick Caserio will help the franchise go in the right direction. Lovie understands football in Texas, and he knows we need winning football down here in Houston. We just need the right players to buy into the new regime. We need some guys who going to stand up and represent the team and the community with some loyalty. You know, I 100% agree. I do. I think that's what makes Lovie Smith as a head coach so dynamic at this time. When we, if we take a look at all things football not on the field here in Houston, Texas, right? They go hand in hand. And so I think that what Lovie brings is the Texas football field, which can be very suffocating, very inviting, very invigorating, a lot of different adjectives that we could throw out there that will make playing for a coach like that, your players are going to want to play for you. And I think that's very important when you look at what Lovie Smith brings for this franchise. Now, in terms of Nick Caserio helping this franchise go in the right direction, Cody, I will respond to that by saying, well, we damn sure going to see come 2 weeks from now. So the NFL draft is very important for Nick Caserio and his coaching staff.
Well, I said this about 100 times already. I'm going to repeat it again. Say what you want about the players Nick Caserio brought in terms of free agents. Say what you want about the players that he actually traded for. And about a handful of them only worked out in favor of the Houston Texans. But one thing that nobody cannot deny is the fact that Nick Caserio did a damn good job drafting players last year. And of course, we all know the story. The Texans had arguably, if not the worst, draft capital in 2021. And it probably came away with one of the best, or at least the most promising draft class of 2021. However, on the flip side of things, when I take a look at Lovie Smith, John, I 100% agree with you. And that's why I am just a little bit concerned about Brian Flores adding the Houston Texans to that lawsuit, because he mentioned on yesterday that because of his lawsuit against the NFL is part of the reason why the Texans were forced to hire Lovie Smith instead of course, their number one candidate everyone knew they was aiming for, Josh McCown. While that might be true, nobody cannot take away the background and the promise that Lovie Smith has brought to this organization as head coach.
I want to continue with Geraldo Rios. I think he was a first-time commenter. I just recently seen him subscribe. Shout out to Rios. This was on For the H, recapping the Houston Texans show. He mentioned that the O-line with the first pick, take an edge or D lineman with the second pick. The second round pick, take the best available running back to pair up with Mac. And I also heard that they could go defensive line heavy. That would be monster. My only response to that, Geraldo, is why take an offensive lineman with your first pick, when that first pick, if it is an offensive lineman, it would have to be an offensive tackle because you're not going to draft one of those guards that early at 3, but you also have Laremy Tunsil and Titus Howard. And so I would say don't take that offensive lineman with the 3rd overall pick. Wait until later in the draft when you can feel some of that guard need just later on. Nobody's going to take a guard with a 3rd overall pick right now. And so that's just my response to that.
I don't know about that, John. Look, you know me. I'm not for taking a lineman that high because I definitely believe that the Texans should go, if anything, defensive front, of course, anything in the secondary. But in terms of the number 3 overall pick, that means if they were to take an offensive lineman, that means it's going to be Evan Neal. And I just found out that Evan Neal actually played left guard during his time at Alabama. I can't remember if it was his freshman or sophomore season, and he did a damn good job. So if they were to take him, you put the Texans in a situation where you're going to give them another year to evaluate Titus Howard. You're going to give them another year to see whether or not you're going to continue this marriage with Laremy Tunsil. You already have a need at left guard. If you bring in Evan Neal, and he already said during his pro day that he can play both guard and tackle, the Texans' offensive line is definitely going to take a step in the right direction.
Yeah, here's my problem with that. They got to stop drafting players at positions that they've been working on and been very successful at just to move them around.
Well, Neal did. Every year Neal did, yeah, but every year Neal did play a different position. If I'm not mistaken, I think he started at left guard, played right tackle, then left tackle, or vice versa. So that's what I'm saying. Like it's very interesting.
That is very true. No doubt about it. I'm still on the side of you can address that corner position. You can address that defensive end position. You already have players that are at that tackle position that you can worry about filling out, maybe getting depth for the future or filling out that guard spots later in the NFL draft. Last one, Kevin Moulton. Why doesn't Owen Daniels ever get the nod when it comes to great Texan? Second best catcher in franchise history. Hold up.
Oh, wow.
We stop you there, Kevin.
He said second, so I guess he's...
Stop you there.
Wow.
And listen, we can feel how we want to feel about the social media jabs, the whole 9. DeAndre Hopkins is arguably the best pass catcher in franchise history. Spent 2 years with 0 drops or something along those lines. But I do think people do forget about Owen Daniels. Owen Daniels was one of the greatest players, in Texas franchise history. But I commented back and I said, well, people have short memory. And that's just what it is. So far, when you talk about tight end position with the Houston Texans, it's very rare people reminisce on the good old days, right? With Owen Daniels. The only thing that comes to mind is we need a tight end for now and the future. So Owen Daniels can get forgotten a lot of times, I think.
Man, it's kind of hard to say the Houston Texans kind of forgot about Owen Daniels because they have been in search of the next Owen Daniels for how many years now? Let's say 6 or 7. And I mean, it just seems like every single year, this is an organization that is starting a new tight end. I mean, just take a look at some of the names that they just had: Darren Fells, Jordan Akins, Ryan. You got Jordan, Brevin Jordan. They started here with Pharaoh Brown. Like that's a lot of guys that came in and out as this team starting tight end, and that is a position that they have not had no type of stability since the departure of Owen Daniels. Now, yes, I do believe that he should be in the Texans Ring of Honor, but to say this man is the second best pass catcher of all time, like what?
Yeah, that's all feelings, Kevin.
You could debate third, but second? No, I wouldn't even say you could debate third. Because I think I'm taking Brandon Cooks as a pass catcher over Owen Daniels.
I think when you look at the franchise history, you go Andre, you go DeAndre. And then that's where the conversations start. Because for a very, good time here in Houston, and I don't believe that he had the longevity as a Owen Daniels. But you got to look at Kevin Walters as well, who was a very solid number two receiver for the Houston Texans for a very long time. He spent between 2007 and 2012 with Houston, and 800 yards, 900 yards, 611, 621. And this was for a franchise, his best year coming in '08 with 900 yards and 8 touchdowns, averaging 15 yards per catch. This was a franchise that was in the early 2000s playing football, which primarily ran the ball. So Houston does have some great pass catchers. I think Owen Daniels definitely makes the case for top five. But come on, Kevin, get out them feelings, man. Johnson and Hopkins are definitely 1A and 1B with one another. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championships, odds, podcasts, and reviews for all of the different leagues this season. By the way, did y'all see Tiger Woods kick it off? If y'all ain't see what I'm talking about, go on Twitter and search Tiger Woods. BetOnline is your source for all of your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action, because BetOnline is where the game.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with this Monday installment of Locked On Texans. And as promised, you see the guy and you're going to hear the voice, Mr. Brandon K. Scott from Sports Radio 610. Brandon, what's going on, my man?
Oh, man, not too much, man. Just trying to fight this Houston pollen and breathe some good air out here and getting ready for this draft, man.
Yeah, man, first and foremost, Houston Rockets had their last game last night, so we no longer on Rockets coverage, at least until we got to worry about their draft. But, really quick shout out to Locked On Rockets. But now you at least have to switch your attention to the Houston Astros and the rest of the MLB, because you are an MLB reporter for Bleacher Report, so your schedule do not lighten up no kind of way. But Brandon, as you mentioned, NFL draft, we are about 2.5, 3 weeks away from the draft, which I already consider probably the most important draft in Texans history, because we already know how this organization has been over the last 20 years. And I guess we could still say that it still does not make sense that they are in this position today, but it's the reality of the situation. Everybody's moving on. You, as always, part of Sports Radio 610. I had an opportunity to listen to you. I don't know if that was last Thursday or last Friday, but you made a very interesting point that I want to get your segment kicked off with. You was talking about Kayvon Thibodeaux in that number 3 pick, and you said, you enamored by Sauce Gardner. There's other players in the draft that you actually like, but with that number 3 pick, you would still take Kayvon Thibodeaux because you still consider him to be the best player in this draft. But as we all know, it seems like his stock is starting to fall, given his quote unquote, I guess, character issues that people are seeing. I don't know. So Brandon, would you mind elaborate on that, please?
Well, that's the problem, right? It's not entirely clear what the beef is with Kayvon Thibodeaux. Like, you hear them say that maybe his attention to the game, and that maybe he doesn't love the game as much. Maybe he doesn't work hard. There are some evaluators that will say that he loafs, or that he has loafed on plays in some of his more recent games. Since he kind of burst onto the scene as a freshman. Kind of, once it was established that he was a top player, he started kind of picking and choosing his battles a little bit. And I honestly don't see as much of that, whenever and I'm not going to pretend to watch as much of the tape as some of the evaluators who are saying this, but I mean, just when I look at the guy, I see an elite talent, a guy with an amazing first step, and easily one of the top 3 players in this draft, if not the best player in the draft. I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't mind if the Texans. I would expect them to take a player like that at number 3, honestly. And I've seen mocks, even to this day, even with his stock dropping, I've still seen mocks that have him going number 2 and Aiden. Like, it was one mock I saw that had Aiden Hutchinson falling to the Texans at 3 because they had Evan Neal going number 1 to Jacksonville, and Detroit taking Kayvon Thibodeaux, which they could also be in the market for a quarterback too. So then Aiden Hutchinson falls to the Texans at number 3. And so Really, the thing about the draft for me right now, Cody, is that there are just so many possibilities, endless possibilities. The fact that there's not like one guy or like even a set of guys, a trio of guys that you could say it's going to go one, two, three in some order like this. You don't even have that. You have no idea how this thing is going to play out. And then you add to the fact that the Texans would like to probably trade out of that number 3 pick and get more picks anyway. So it might be a moot point at the end. But yeah, I just don't understand how that guy went from being the consensus top 1, 2, 3 players in the draft to folks got him falling to 8th and to the back end of the top 10. That part doesn't make sense for me. And as for the Texans, they got needs everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we know that if you get, like, say it's the other scenario, they can get Aiden Hutchinson. That would be great. If it's Kayvon Thibodeaux, you get a dude like that on the edge. They are missing that. They need that, especially in a defense where they don't blitz a lot. They're trying to bring pressure with 4, and outside of Jonathan Grenard, they don't have a lot there in the end. And I think there are a couple of prospects in this draft that could be just as good, if not better, than Jonathan Grenard, to where he could be more of even a rotational guy, depending on how things shake out. You're probably not going to draft more than one edge rusher that high, but I think it's just that talented, that deep of a draft, to where you could address multiple needs at once. And Kayvon Thibodeaux, to me, is a no-brainer. I think some people might be overthinking it a little bit.
Kayvon Thibodeaux stock is dropping, but he's still a top 10 pick. There's another guy stock that's rising, Malik Willis. And you know I was about to ask you that question because I think as a Texans family, from reporters to fans, we all have accepted the reality of the situation. We are ready to rebuild, but there's this one little topic that got people split down the middle. Are you a Davis Mills fan, or do you think he doesn't have it and you ready for them to move on? Brandon, you also mentioned that you would be okay to see the Texans take a chance on Malik Willis and kind of create some kind of quarterback competition, some kind of quarterback battle here in the city of Houston. Why is that? And I'm part of your team, General Mills.
Yeah, I would position it more like this, because I think there are better players in the draft than Malik Willis that I would much rather have, just to be clear. Like I mentioned Kayvon Thibodeaux. I'd rather have him. Rather have one of them corners, Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley. I'd rather have Kyle Hamilton. I'd rather have, and we're talking about maybe the second pick, the number 13 pick, but I'd rather have one of them 6 receivers that I think could be excellent going forward. There's about 5 or 6 receivers that you could get in the first round of this draft. Pick of the litter that could be excellent for you. So just to be clear, I'd much rather have those guys. But as it pertains to Malik Willis and this particular quarterback situation, I think that when you look at this draft, okay, there is not a team. The only teams in the top, let's call it 12 picks, the picks before the Texans' second pick, the only teams that I would argue are for sure 100% not in the market for a quarterback are the Jaguars, who pick ahead of the Texans anyway at number 1 overall, so that doesn't matter. And the Jets, who, whatever you think about Zach Wilson, they're gonna go with the guy that they picked number 2 overall last year. I don't think that they've lost faith in them, nor that I think that they should have. But with the Texans, I think you have an interesting scenario here where this could be sort of like, not exactly like what the Washington, then racial slurs, but now Commanders did when they drafted Robert Griffin and Kirk Cousins, of course, in the same year. This would be back-to-back years, but I don't think that it's a bad idea when you don't have the quarterback position solved. And you can believe in Davis Mills all you want. What you cannot say is that the position is solved. We would all agree, no matter how much you believe in him, you still need to see more. You still need to see it play out. He's still got a lot to prove. And so when you don't have the position solved, I don't think that you just stop trying. And if Malik Willis has potential, if his upside, if you think, okay, if you're the evaluator and you think his upside is higher than Davis Mills, and not just higher than Davis Mills, but that this could be your franchise quarterback, I don't think that Davis Mills is a good enough excuse or reason for you not to draft that guy. So this is not so much about me lobbying for them to draft Malik Willis, because I think there are just so many other good players that they could get right there. Not to mention the fact that they want to trade back anyway, and that they could get even more players. All right. So we're having kind of a little bit of fun with this exercise, but I will say the whole thing about Malik Willis that will, I guess, sort of haunt me is that if the Texans were in a position to get him, and this is why I said I hope that the Lions just pick him at number 2.
Yeah. I remember you saying that.
Like if they just do that, we don't have to sweat it. I don't have to do this unnecessary mental gymnastics in my head. Okay, now I'm comparing Davis Mills to Malik Willis for the rest of their careers, because I'm wondering, I'm like, okay, did they pass on this guy either A, because they misevaluated him, B, because they believed in Davis Mills more than they should have, or C, both, and so that's sort of my concern, because I do think that he has some elite traits and some things that are interesting about him, give me Davis Mills' accuracy and ball placement and the way he's been able to develop in his rookie year and reading defenses and all of that. Give me that. Okay, I definitely understand people maybe even believing in Davis Mills more than they believe in Malik Willis as a prospect. But I'm saying if you are sold on Malik Willis, if Pep Hamilton and Nick Caserio and like the offensive minds in that building think that they can do something with that dude, I would hate for Davis Mills to be the reason why they don't try it.
Last question before getting out of here. You mentioned two of these guys, and at the end of last week, after his pro day at LSU, it seems like there was a debate who should be the number one corner taken off the board. Is it Derek Stingley or is it Miles Sauce Gardner? We actually had fun with that conversation last week, but Brandon, I would like your thoughts on that. If you were in the draft room and Nick Caserio was to say, Brandon, Stingley, Sauce, which way are you leaning?
Yeah, man. Honestly, I'm leaning Stingley just because I've seen more of him. But Sauce, man, I wouldn't be mad at Sauce either. Here's the thing that I feel like is interesting, and I know we're keeping this to the cornerbacks, but I just wonder how, because there's the positional depth here. I was mentioning wide receiver earlier. There are a few cornerbacks that you can get. There are obviously several linemen on both sides of the ball that you could get. I'm just really interested in how all of the dominoes fall, because, I don't think, obviously at number 3, they would be able, if that's the decision that they're making at number 3, then for sure, that's a question. But once you get further into the draft, one of those guys, I've seen mocks that have these guys falling all the way out of the top or to the back end of the top 10, maybe into the top 15, depending on how it shakes. There's one with Kyle Hamilton, who some people believe is the best player in this draft. And I think he's certainly in the conversation for that. Him dropping all the way down out of the top 15. So I'm just really interested to see how all of that shakes out. I would go with Stingley. I think he's the better all around player. But certainly if that's the problem, I'll find that to be one of them good problems, if you know what I mean. If that's what you're picking between, I honestly like both of their chances to be really good cornerbacks in this league.
This is the time of year where a lot of people may have pretty much given up on their New Year resolutions, but I definitely have a way to make things easier, especially in terms of sticking to your resolutions of eating healthier, thanks to Built Bar. It's almost like it's not even really a resolution anymore. It becomes a part of your daily lifestyle. And have you tried, the fans of the Built Bar and people who need to hop on this train, have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't tried the Puffs, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not even a protein bar. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and it's covered just like every other Built Bar in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some of the most incredible flavors: the cinnamon churro, the coconut marshmallow, and banana cream pie. All of those flavors are testing through the roof. And again, all of the Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Go to Built.com, scroll down to the macros chart, and you'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Most of the Built Bar contains 130 calories, 3 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually carries around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, a dozen of net carbs. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with this latest installment of Locked On Texans. Mr. Brandon K. Scott here for his weekly visit. Brandon, last segment we talked a lot about the draft and how the Houston Texans can actually trend in the right direction. But last week, the biggest news surrounding the Texans was their ability to bring back Brandon Cooks, especially given that the week before we started hearing all these trade rumors that the Texans could depart for him for like a second round pick. But when you take a look at this relationship with Brandon Cooks, especially, we all know the last, year and a half to 2 years, so many talented players have walked out that door for 6'10" and Kirby, whether they was forced out or they just plain old just wanted out. For the Texans to keep Brandon Cooks, is it safe to say that this organization is finally trending in the right direction? Because not only do you have Brandon Cooks staying, but you also have Laramie Tunsil reworking their relationship and him staying as well.
Yeah. The Laramie Tunsil thing might be a little bit more noteworthy to your point than necessarily Brandon Cooks, because let's keep in mind, Brandon Cooks was brought in by this regime. He is a Jack Easterby guy to start with, going back to their days in New England. And to his credit, like, Brandon Cooks has been excellent consistently throughout his career. He is an excellent pro. I don't even like to get into the semantics of whether he's a number one or a number two, or like what, like, he is an excellent football player who would fit in. Brandon Cooks has a place on any and all 32 teams in the NFL. Let's just put it to you that way. No matter if you want to make him your top receiver, second receiver, third receiver, a locker room guy, the guy, he can do whatever you ask him to do and will do whatever you ask him to do. So I think that's really the important thing about signing Brandon Cooks. And again, he was a guy who they had a relationship with, or at least who Jack Easterby had a relationship with prior to getting here. I think, honestly, Cody, the more important point about signing Brandon Cooks, or just the reason why it was important to maybe not trade him unless there was some type of astute plan to replace him. Because here's the thing. None of us would argue that the Texans have a super talented wide receiving core, right? We're not going to know. Is there anybody making that case? I don't think so, right? And just the fact that Brandon Cooks is by far and away their best receiver, I think, says a lot. And then again, I just said all these nice things about Brandon Cooks, but he probably shouldn't be your best receiver by far and away. You know, like, if he's going to be your best receiver, your second best receiver probably should be somewhere comparable to him, right? You know, like, he shouldn't be far and away your best guy. So that, to me, speaks to the dire need there at that position, to where if you trade him, okay, who are you replacing him with? And that's a question that's relevant no matter where you are in your rebuild, no matter how many games you're expecting to win. Honestly, no matter who your quarterback is. Like, if even if you don't believe in Davis Mills, if you do believe in Davis Mills, if you want what's best for Davis Mills, like, no matter what your perspective is on it, you cannot have a receiver who, when push come to shove, you can't just throw it and know that he's going to catch it. Like every team's gotta have that guy, like that reliable target. And Brandon Cooks, for the last, and certainly last year, is that guy. Like, who there's no one else on the team right now who you feel like is that level of reliable. And if you trade him, okay, that means now you're drafting a guy who you're hoping can be that guy. Or you're saying, okay, Nico Collins, now it's time for you in year 2 to be that guy. You know, I don't think you think Chris Conley is that guy, or any other veterans are going to be that guy, right? So like it would have been one of those things where you don't really have a solution. And like, what the hell is wrong with having Brandon Cooks on the team? Like, that's the part that I don't understand. Like, people would complain about, like, out of all the things to complain about this football team, all the players, management, coaching, decision making, like everything. If there's anything not to complain about, to me, it would be Brandon Cooks. He's got no holes in his game. Doesn't talk, doesn't talk crap about anybody. Like, he's just goes about his business. Like, I don't get that. And then Laramie Tunsil, for me, what the Laramie Tunsil sign did, it surprised me. First of all, I just want to say that I thought, that this relationship was over with. Okay, that was just me, and that hadn't been me talking to anybody necessarily. That was just me kind of reading the tea leaves and like kind of just looking at what the writing on the wall seemed to be. Mm-hmm. So the fact that they did do that actually did surprise me, but it's encouraging because I feel like if they play their cards right and try to get competitive in these next couple of years, like they can have their bookend tackles, like pick up Titus's fifth-year option, put him over back at right tackle. You already got Laramie at left tackle. You got tackles. You got them. Where you're weak at on the offensive line is a guard, and there's some questions there at center too. With Justin Britt, his age and wear and tear and all of that. Like, those are the places where you really need to upgrade. So that was to me why whenever I look at these mock drafts, Cody and see Ike Ekwonu or Evan Neal, and I'm like, yeah, I think those guys are gonna be great, but rolling my eyes because we already got those. Like, if there's any argument of position of need, which I'm not even I'm a best player available guy, right? Mm-hmm. But if there's any argument for position of need with the Texans, they don't need no tackles, man. At least not that high. I mean, they don't need no tackles at all, man, because they got Laramie, Titus Howard, and then Charlie Heck's your swing tackle. Charlie Heck ain't great, but if that's your swing tackle, and they've been doing pretty good at swing tackle. Had Roger Johnson before that. Teron Christian last year was out there. Look, I'm good with tackles, but this Laramie Tunsil thing, I think solidified that they can go out there and go get some defensive players and playmakers high in the draft.
Speaking of playmakers, I think their biggest free agency signing might be the fact that they brought in running back Marlon Mack, and we know how terrible this run game was. And I don't know about you, Brandon, but I do believe Marlon Mack will help out this run game a lot. It seems like his career was trending on the right direction before he tore his Achilles, I think, during the 2019 or 20 season. I can't remember which one. I think it was more so 20. But, the fact the Texans brought in Marlon Mack, and it seems like he's going to be the lead back. Where do you think the Texans should go after a running back in this year's draft? Do you still think it should be within the top 3 rounds, or do you think because they have Marlon Mack, maybe you go out and explore the market again, maybe after the draft, later on in the draft, or doing the free agency signing, trying to get those running backs who did not get picked up?
Pardon me for that. No, I think that you can get a really good running back at the top of the second round, and I'm still wanting to do that. Like, I don't think Marlon Mack helps you for this year.
Okay.
And maybe next year and further into the future, but I think that you still need to get, like, to me, if it's Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead, I still got a problem. And of course, Scotty Phillips is there, but like, if that's going to be your top 2 backs, Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead, and you're telling me that that's what we're going to do, I'm still kind of underwhelmed by that. And I like Breece Hall as a prospect. I think that can be your running back for the next couple of years. Who knows how long these guys are going to last, Like Marlon Mack with the Achilles thing. My fear is, and look, you can argue that last year he ended up losing his playing time, and I think he wanted to be traded or released. Like, he wanted to get out of there because obviously Jonathan Taylor and Nakeem Hines, like they had their running backs at that point.
Which is understandable for Taylor, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Taylor might be the best running back in the league right now. Like, he's at least top 3, top 5 running back in the league right now. So when you consider that, like, okay, it makes you wonder, did he just lose his job to somebody that's just a superior player, who's obviously just a superior player, or like, how much is this? That's what I'll be interested to see once we get to training camp, right, Cody? It's like, okay, how much of this Achilles thing is affecting his burst and like his ability to hit the hole like the way the way you would expect him to as your lead back, and and the questions of how much he has left. Like, could it be one of those things where we've seen these guys who have just like that 1 year, like 2019, I'm pretty sure was the year where he was like really, really good. And like running backs have this, we've seen it. We just had one here in David Johnson, who had one amazing year in 2016. I remember that he was excellent at 2016. Has never looked like that again, and this happens with running backs. I can remember some of the earlier Texan days with guys like Steve Slayton, who had like a 1 year, either it was 08 or I think it was like this happens with running backs where they pop for that 1 year and an injury sets them back, the mileage sets them back, or they just never able to regain that form. I'm obviously rooting for Marlon Mack to be excellent, and hopefully he is. But I think even independent of that, if you can get Hall, if you can get a Breece Hall or somebody like that at the top of the second round, I think you jump at that chance.
Brandon K. Scott from Sports Radio 610. Brandon, really quick, where can our listeners follow you at on social media and with the NFL draft coming up? And I think this is the first set of all-season workouts that's going to be going on off of 610 and Kirby. I don't know about you, but I will be there. Are you going to be there?
Oh, yeah, man. I can't wait. I will for sure be there. I'm excited about it. Yeah, this week we're going to get a chance to take a look. Or at least hear from, for sure, at least hear from, I'll say, from Lovie Smith and a select number of the players. So that's always good. It doesn't seem like that long ago, honestly, Cody, when we were doing those exit interviews, maybe because of how busy the offseason has been. But, man, I'm excited about that. Talk to some of these players, see what their offseason has been like. And, also how do they consume this draft period? Do they pay attention to it? I mean, it affects their team, especially when you're on a team like this. This is not, this is not the, this is not the Los Angeles Rams. You know what I mean? Like, this is a team that, I think a lot of what your season is going to look like is going to depend on what y'all do in the draft. You know what I mean? So I'd be interested to know what some of the things are they might have to say about that, or how they might be consuming that. So yeah, man, it's gonna be a good time. Y'all can follow me at Brandon K. Scott. Follow Sports Radio 610 at Sports Radio 610. We will be doing all kinds of stuff, articles, podcast segments, obviously on air. I think sometime later this month, it might be the 24th, I think, or the 23rd, whichever Friday, closest to that Friday is. I'll be on with we're on the show Hughley, and for Clint Sterner.
Which, by the way, anytime Show and Brandon get together, it is the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
That is my favorite show on Sports Radio 610, by the way. I love Ron the Show Hughley and Clint Sterner. It's so funny.
Yeah, man. We have a good time. And one thing that they've been doing, I should mention this too, now that since you said that, is that every Friday they are doing what we call a Bullets and Bugs tour, which is basically just crawfish and beer, beer and crawfish. And so it's a different location every week, every Friday. And we invite all people, all Texans fans and listeners to come check us out and come hang out. Even if you don't like what they talking about, if y'all just want to come chop it up and kick it and drink some beer and eat crawfish, we're doing that every week. So follow Sports Radio 610 to kind of keep up with where that's going to be at. But Clint Sterner and the show doing that. And I'm around for that too.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody, CotyDavis _24. And for my co-host, John, some sports guy Hickman, you can follow him at John_Hickman12. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.